The private jet landed smoothly on the tarmac at Clifton Airport in Ireland. Gus, Blue and Toby Winters were escorted off the plane by Arlia and her 2 loyal bodyguards. They looked in awe at the town in front of them. Clifton is located at the head of Galway Bay, and is surrounded by mountains and lakes. The landscape of Clifton is rugged and beautiful, with towering mountains, lush green fields, and sparkling lakes. It was very different from Bencow Falls, California, yet still had the same mysterious vibe. Unfortunately, Gus and Toby could not for long linger on the town of Clifton. They had a job to do. They needed to rescue Mr. Dominus, who was on a plane that crash-landed in the ocean a few miles outside the city. But while Toby was rather gloomy about their inevitable fate, Gus believed that they could escape. It was the perfect opportunity. Gus walked up to Toby, attempting to whisper in his ear, but before he could say anything, a limousine pulled up outside the plane at the apron of the airport where he, Toby, Arlia, and her guards were standing. The driver parked the car and got out, flashing a smile. He was tall, with short red hair, and sunglasses. "Welcome to Clifton," the driver said cheerfully in his thick Irish accent. "We hope to best accommodate the NOS's mission here." "NOS?" Toby asked. "Novus Ordo Seclorum." "Wait. How many people actually know about your so-called secret organization?" "Many," Arlia smirked. "Most do not know the full extent of our secrets. Like our handsome driver. My dad doesn't even know most of what is happening. He still calls me Pumpkin. But he doesn't need to know. It makes him money, and makes me happy, and that's all that matters." Toby shook his head. The Novus Ordo Seclorum was so complicated. From communists to neo-Nazi cultists, scheming politicians to killer businessmen, everything felt like a house of cards. This couldn't be sustainable. Toby thought he needed to play the long game in order to destroy this tyrannical secret society. "Now, let's get going," Arlia said. "Grand," said the driver. "Mr. Blue, you will take the FR." Before the driver could finish what he was saying, Gus jumped and punched him in the face. The driver collapsed to the ground, his nose bloodied. Arlia gasped in horror. Toby stood there with shock. "What are you doing, Gus?" Toby asked in shock. "Get in the limousine. Drive us out of here," yelled Gus. Toby stammered in confusion. "Wah wah. It," Gus interrupted. Toby hesitated for only a millisecond. He ran toward the driver's seat of the limousine and shut the door behind him. Gus followed suit and went into the passenger seat. Arlia's bodyguards stood there completely baffled by Gus's and Toby's reckless boldness. "What are you waiting for? Get them," Arlia barked. The bodyguards were fast, but Gus and Toby built too big of a lead to catch up to. Toby put his foot on the gas and sped off away out of Apron and onto an open road to Clifton proper. The last thing they saw was Arlia Marie DuPont seething in rage. After only about 10 minutes of driving, Gus and Toby arrived in Clifton proper. The town was small, with only a population of a little more than 1,500 people. They both were profusely sweating, their hearts speedily beating. They had been sitting in silence for over 15 minutes now. Toby decided to finally break it. "Okay, what the hell was that? We had to escape somehow. We can start a new life," said Gus. "They're gonna kill us," Toby yelled. "Remember what Dominus said he would do. These people, they don't care about killing. They've made me kill hundreds of people this last week. You can't be so stupid. So you want to do nothing? I don't want to do nothing. There is plenty to do. The question I ponder is, how do we do it? Do we play it smart and slowly break apart the Novus Ordo Seclorum, or do we have a meltdown and punch our Irish driver? Well, it's too late. We need to find someplace safe, said Gus. Toby nodded and started to drive the limousine off the road, into a grassy field, and into a series of large bushes. Wait, what are you doing? Asked Gus. They're probably tracking the limousine, said Toby. If we're gonna be safe, we need to find a place in town to camp out in. They'll probably find us, but it's worth a try. Toby parked the limousine in the bushes, making it hidden from the average looker on the road. When they got out, Gus had an idea. Look, Gus pointed at a Catholic church a little ahead in the distance. We could be safe there. Maybe, Toby thought. I don't think they're above attacking a church. But I just don't care anymore. Gus and Toby walked towards the church. Eventually, they were able to make out the name, St. Joseph's Catholic Church. The architecture was Gothic, with a majestic tower that looked over the whole town of Clifton. It was very different from the Presbyterian church that Gus went to. Gus and Toby opened the holy doors and entered the church. It was no surprise that the inside was just as beautiful as the outside. What was a surprise is that they were the only two people in the church, except for the parish priest. The small parish priest walked up to them. Sorry gents, we don't have any service today. Please, Gus pleaded. We just need a roof to house us. Some maniacs are chasing after us. The parish priest scoffed. Yanks. Americans. You need to leave. Please. No. I don't want to hear it. The parish priest suddenly paused. As he looked behind Gus and Toby. Gus and Toby turned around and saw the largest, tallest man they ever saw. He wasn't as fat as Mr. Dominus, but he was much taller. He wore a purple cassock and had reddish-brown hair. Forgive my cara, the man said in the thickest Irish accent anyone has ever heard. I am Archbishop Connor Miller of Clifton. You two are more than welcome to stay here. Thank you, Toby said gratefully. Archbishop Miller smiled. Of course, my lad. That's what Jesus is about. It's about helping those in need. Stay as long as you like. Archbishop Miller walked away with the parish priest, leaving Gus and Toby alone in St. Joseph's Church. Alia Marie Dupont stood outside Clifton Airport. She felt humiliated, so she took her anger out at her bodyguards. You are incompetent imbeciles, morons. Alia insulted. Do you imagine how much the other students are gonna make fun of me? They laughed at me for weeks for dating those impoverished swine Rico and Jesse. Now I fail to get Dominus. Because of you. We're sorry, ma'am, one of the bodyguards said. You better be. Alia stomped at the ground. Now find Dominus. You know where to look. The bodyguards nodded and left. While Dominus might be found, she realized she needed to find Gus and Toby. She had plenty of wealth, but not many connections in Clifton. She went to the city once when she was a child, but that was about it. She was one of Dominus's favorite students and didn't want to lose that reputation. She feared she would end up like Harry a couple weeks ago, or even worse like Mr. Walter and Mayor Clark. Alia saw a poster of a bounty hunter at the airport. The poster said, Fife McDonald, The Scottish bounty hunter is in Clifton this May. Hire him to do any job. She learned from a few locals outside the airport that Fife could be found at local pubs, drinking and gambling, waiting for hirers to seek him out. With that knowledge, Alia made her way to the pub. She wasn't used to being alone, usually accompanied by many friends or guards. Even so, she had a plan. Drinking age is 18, said the bartender as Alia sat down. Get out, lass. Well, isn't that unfortunate? Alia batted her eyelashes as she put €100 on the bar. I'm sure a handsome fellow like you could bend the rules. The bartender, overcome with Alia's charm and money, nodded his head. Give me your most expensive cocktail, Alia said. The bartender left Alia on her own. She began looking around the bar, trying to find the legendary Scottish bounty hunter. The Scotsman does it again, said a voice. Round 3 to MacDonald, said another. Alia followed the voices to a blackjack table, where Fife sat at. He had a grey beard that looked like it had gone through all sorts of adventures, with piercing grey eyes and pink cheeks. He drank out of a bottle of whiskey. He was surrounded by 4 other men who were also playing blackjack at the table. Behind him stood a tall and skinny woman in her mid-20s. Excuse me, is it true that you are Fife MacDonald? Alia asked. What does that mean to you, little girlie? Fife responded, annoyed. I need your help, Alia said. Help? Fife scoffed. Help putting away your dolls and sweeping the floor. Who the hell even are ye? You don't recognize the raven. Hair and blue eyes, Faither, said the young woman behind Fife. That's the only kin of Pierre Dupont. Dupont? Fife spat out his whiskey. I hate the French. Whether you hate my family or not, I'm sure a little money could get you working. Alia tossed a few €100 on the table. How does that sound, Mr. MacDonald? Don't listen to her, Faither, said the woman. She's just a spoiled Yank. Better than being dressed like a homeless woman. Alia laughed. Who even are you? I'm Elspeth MacDonald. The woman, Elspeth, stood tall. My Faither will not take jobs from rich American brats on their vacation. She's right, Fife said. Now get out and let me finish my game. Suit yourself, said Alia, smiling. Eventually, you'll lose. If you're running low on cash, you'll know where to find me. Alia sat back down at the bar. She just needed to wait. It had been 6 hours since Gus and Toby had arrived in St. Joseph's Church. They were all alone, and surprisingly cold. Toby knew it was only a matter of time that the Novus Ordo Seclorum found them. Gus realized that they needed to come up with a plan, so he and Toby decided that they would try to escape during the night and travel to Dublin. They came up with new identities and cover stories. Gus knew that this was the best option, but he felt bad for his brother. Hopefully he could get into contact with Vinny and tell him all about the insanity of the last month. As Gus and Toby sat in the pew chairs, practicing their Irish accents, they saw the tall, jolly Archbishop Connor Miller enter the church. Hello, lads. Archbishop Miller smiled. You've been here for a long while now. May I ask you why? Basically, it's kind of complicated, said Gus. I can keep a secret. I used to be a priest. I've sat through many confessions, said Archbishop Miller. The problem is if we tell you, that could danger you. We don't want to do that, said Toby. I understand. Archbishop Miller graciously sat beside them. It's hard being a young man. The world is a challenging place for everybody. I remember getting myself into plenty of trouble in my youth. Remember, there are good people in the world. Thank you. You're very wise, said Toby. The problem is that no matter what we have, no matter where we go, we can't catch a break. Where are the good people? The Archbishop leaned forward. The good people in the world are often the ones no one expects, and the villains are the ones that outwardly appear to be a saint. Gus leaned back and closed his eyes. At least Ireland has friendly people. In California, everyone is an asshole. That warms my heart, said Archbishop Miller. I also grew up in California. You grew up in California? Gus asked, in shock. You're as Irish as could be. Archbishop Miller laughed. True. My great-grandfather was from Ireland but moved to California in the 1870s. Once my sister married, I moved back to Clifton to continue my career of worship. Where in California are you from? Asked Toby. My family was one of the founders of Bencow Falls, said Archbishop Miller. You're from Bencow Falls? Gus jumped up in shock. How was your family one of the founders? My great-grandfather was Freedom Miller. He and Elliot Bencow founded the city. Gus and Toby stared at each other in shock. Not only was he from Bencow Falls, but he was a descendant of Freedom Miller. I go to Freedom Miller High School, Gus said. Was it as bad when you went as it was today? Don't insult his family's school, Toby interjected. No. It's okay, Archbishop Miller said. I'm sad to hear the school has taken a downward spiral, but to be honest, that downward spiral had been set in motion over 100 years ago. How so? Toby asked. Just like your story was hard to explain, so is mine. Archbishop Miller stood up. I have to get going now. I wish you two lads the best of luck. Archbishop Miller walked out of the church, leaving Gus and Toby alone once again. The two young boys thought about the wisdom they had just been given by the bishop, and how to apply it to their current situation. Alia sat at the bar, finishing her 5th drink. Her parents had never allowed her to drink before, so she indulged in the opportunity to drink copious amounts of alcohol. With every drink, she felt more and more intoxicated with her power, her ego growing to tremendous heights. Eventually, what she had predicted came true. Fife lost everything in blackjack. Ah! Fife screamed. It's time to pay up, you Scottish bastard, said the short man who beat them. I'll pay it tomorrow. Fife took a drink of whiskey. It seems we have no choice, Elspeth. Elspeth scoffed. Don't tell me what I think you're trying to tell me. Sorry daughter, said Fife. That DuPont lass has a lot of money. It'll just take a minute. Elspeth shook her head. She couldn't believe that her father made so much money, yet always lost it all. She had been trying to help her father for years, but nothing ever seemed to make a difference. Fife and Elspeth walked up to Alia, who was arrogantly smirking. Well, Alia's breath reeked of alcohol. I'm glad you finally made a decision, Mr. MacDonald. What do you need? Fife said coldly. I've taken out anarchists, murderers, and English Neds. I'm prepared for anything. Luckily your job is easy. Alia's speech was slurred as she pulled out her phone and showed Fife and Elspeth a photo of Gus and Toby. Gus Blue and Toby Winters. They escaped from my custody. Don't kill them. Capture them and bring them to me before tonight is over. You want us to capture some kids? Elspeth said. You're even more drunk than you look. I'm offering you €100,000, Alia said. Get the job done. Fife's eyes turned to dollar signs. He was ready to refuse the request of capturing the kids. After all, he could always find another bounty to go after instead to pay off his debt. But learning how high the reward was to find Gus and Toby, he knew he had to capture them. This money could change his life. Fife turned to his daughter. We need this money. We could buy a nice Scottish home we always wanted to live in. Fine. Elspeth hugged her father. I'll always be here to help you. Fife and Elspeth continued to look across Clifton for the next couple hours. Being such a small town, it wasn't hard to find leads. Eventually, they found the limousine that Gus and Toby had crashed into the bushes. It was only a matter of minutes before they would realize that Gus and Toby were hiding in the church. Archbishop Connor Miller stood outside St. Joseph's Church. He pressed his large hand on a brick of the St. Joseph's steeple. As he pressed it, the brick began moving into the steeple, moving all the other bricks around it, soon revealing a secret door. The Archbishop walked through the door into the secret tunnel. The door shut behind him without him lifting a finger. Archbishop Miller walked down the long, dark tunnel, his footsteps echoing off the stone walls. He had been coming to this secret room for years, ever since he was a young priest. Where he was going was kept secret even from the parish priest. The tunnel led to a small, circular room with a domed ceiling. The only light came from a single candle in the center of the room. The walls were lined with bookshelves, filled with ancient texts and scrolls. In the center of the room was a large, stone table. At the table sat his former brother-in-law, Mr. Dominus. Connor. Mr. Dominus smiled. It's so good to see you again. The last time was the funeral, Archbishop Miller said with sadness. I still haven't gotten over it. Neither have I, Mr. Dominus said. Your sister taught me everything I knew. The Novus Ordo Seclorum wouldn't have existed without her. She was the love of my life. You were a good husband, Archbishop Miller said. It's time to finish what she started. It's time the New World Order brings peace and security to the whole world. Mr. Dominus stood up. I couldn't agree more. We sleep underneath this world of mediocrity without anyone batting an eye. Isn't it amusing that I've been under Toby Winters and Gus Blue this whole time, yet they have no idea. They're planning to leave tonight. I heard them speaking, Archbishop Miller said. You were right about your plan. Everything is proceeding as you anticipated. I always like to test my students, said Mr. Dominus. Gus Blue is not a student, but I believe he is capable of even greater things. Gus proved that he could make bold decisions. Toby showed obedience to his master, except his master is Gus. I just need to redirect his obedience towards me. Alia proved that she can do things on her own. Archbishop Miller smiled. I have always admired your ability in turning a bad situation into a good one. Mr. Dominus leaned forward. If you want to learn my secret, Connor, it's all about keeping my secrets to myself. You're not the only one with secrets, said Archbishop Miller. What do you mean? Asked Mr. Dominus. Archbishop Miller walked to the bookshelves and slid it forward. Mr. Dominus was shocked at what he saw. Another secret door. Mr. Dominus and Archbishop Miller opened the door. and went down the tunnels deeper and deeper. By the time they reached the end of the tunnel, they must have gone down a few hundred feet underground. At the end of the tunnel stood a large door. Archbishop Miller used all his strength to open it. What Mr. Dominus saw on the other side of the door, it was like something he had never seen before. The door led to a balcony that overlooked a massive training facility. In the facility, 5 groups of 50 highly trained soldiers were standing in formation. After my sister died, this became my life's work, said Archbishop Miller. I recruited children from the age of 1. Me and my cohort have trained them here, putting them through the toughest conditions, making them the strongest humans to ever live. Mr. Dominus smiled, but part of him was worried. Why wasn't he told of this? Archbishop Miller continued. I made a separate squadron for each one of your students. The 50 soldiers with the government symbol is for whoever replaces Clark. The 50 soldiers with the swastika is for whoever replaces Walter. I believe Schneider. The 50 soldiers with the $sign are for Mr. Roots. The 50 soldiers with the hammer and sickle are for VB. The 50 soldiers with the diamond are for Miss DuPont. They will all be ready in a few weeks. What do you think? I'm impressed, said Mr. Dominus. They will be of great use to the Novus Ordo Seclorum. Archbishop Miller smiled. Anything for my lad. Mr. Dominus began to look up. He grinned wickedly, his chins doubling. Tonight, the plan reaches its final conclusion, said Mr. Dominus. Toby Winters and Gus Blue will dislike each other so much they'll want to stay away from each other, and whether Arlia planned it or not, it'll be all thanks to one Scottish bounty hunter.